Hey, welcome back to the Marianne Hickman Show. I got to tell you, after September 10th of this year, 2025, I'm feeling a little bit different. The other day, I was a podcast guest on a show, and this was weeks ago, but they gave me a word called, they called me something. I'm not usually a big fan of name calling, but I liked this one. So I might keep this one. But the name of Podpaster is what they called me. I wrote it down because I liked it so much. So if you're new to the Marianne Hickman Show, welcome. If you've been listening to the Marianne Hickman Show for a while, things are going to get different around here. Things are going to get a little unraveled in the best way, unwrapped. The gloves are coming off. And it starts today. I want to introduce you to the guests I had on this show. The guests I had on this show, we have been trying for months to coordinate. And even this morning, when I was supposed to have them on at 9:30, I plumb spaced it. And so I said, I got an opening later this afternoon. Let's get you in because I feel like your message is necessary. And I feel like all of the scheduling and misscheduling that we've had to go through to get you on the show has led up to this moment. And we didn't give up because the best things are worth fighting for. This episode, we get real. I ask questions that may change your life. I ask questions that may change the life of the person whose name comes to your mind while you're listening to this. And if their name comes to your mind, it's because they've been praying for what you just got, and you're supposed to send it to them. That's what your messengers are telling you. That's what their messengers have asked your messengers to tell you. So when you get someone that comes to mind, send this to them. Say, you were just on my mind. And if you got this from someone who sent it to you, just make sure you say thank you. Send them a piece of gratitude. Before I introduce you to our guests, I just want to share with you a scripture that has hit me really profoundly. This one comes from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good for the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. I translate that to mean be nicer than necessary. Be kinder than necessary. Don't let those thoughts, those aggravated words that you want to yell at the driver who cut you off, or those aggravated words that come to your mind when someone that you love or someone that you hate frustrates you, stop it in your mind. Let only love and edification come out of your mouth. That's my message for you today. But I want to introduce you to this guest that we have. His name is Steve Mann. He's the father of a friend of mine. And Steve Mann is a global entrepreneur. He's a philanthropist. In this episode, you're going to hear him talk about all of the many different countries in which he's served and he's lived. And there's something to this. And it touched my travel bug. I love travel for the reason that he talks about, because it opens our minds. It expands our hearts. And if you get nothing else from this show today, I hope that it leaves you with this. The person that's different from you, get curious. Get lovingly curious. Go say hello. You may save a life. I hope you enjoy this episode. I'll see you right in there. If you're listening to this, you have no idea what it took to get this podcast put together in the last 20 minutes, in the last 20 weeks, ever since this all came together. And I believe for very good reason. Typically the best things are the hardest things to produce. So we stuck with it. We are here and you're here. And I'm so excited because I've got the father of one of my very good friends on this podcast with us today. I've got Steve Mann with us here today. He's just published a book. Now, Steve, am I saying that correct? It is published and out, or are you in pre-release right now?
It is published and out. It looks just like that.
Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. I don't have a copy. I'm remiss. I usually like to read the book before we have you on, but I've got the author right here. So listen, we're recording. It is September 12th, 2025. And if this podcast had occurred at any other time, I think it would be very different than what it's going to be today. This week has been exceptionally heavy for those of us in the content creation business. It has been heavy for speakers. It has been heavy for the entire state of Utah. It's been heavy for the United States. It's been heavy over in Evergreen, Colorado. It's been heavy for immigrants. It's been heavy for people all over the world who, if anyone has turned on a screen we are inundated and surrounded by harrowing tragedy all around us. And you and I were texting a little bit before we started on the show and said, do we want to address this? Do we not? And it is my opinion, and I think that we are together on this, that it that the stories that are, and it's just the title of your book, it has to do with the stories worth telling. There are stories that were created this week that will make or break people. There are
Yeah.
stories, tell us what your thoughts are on this, and then also tell us what someone can be blessed with by spending the next 30, 45 minutes with us.
Well, first, I maybe bring a little different perspective to this. I was in high school when President Kennedy was assassinated, and remember watching the television 12 hours a day, everything that was going on, just astounded. And then the same thing with Martin Luther King. And then I wasn't where I could watch television when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, but he was one of my heroes, and it was devastating. And back then, we thought of those as just a one-off experience. That was before we started all these high school killings, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse over time. And somehow we have lost the ability to communicate. And if we lose that, we lose the essence of a democracy. And somehow we have to get that back. We've got to learn how to talk with each other and learn from each other, not just point fingers and yell. Because all of that pointing fingers and yelling leads to murders and assassinations. And that doesn't solve problems.
Hey, what's up? Marianne Hickman here. Listen, I'm interrupting my own show because I want to give you something. Now, you guys all want to get on more stages. I got a free resource for you of stages that are just clamoring for guests. They need guests on a daily, weekly, sometimes monthly basis. This is my podcast database. Now, what I'm going to do is have you go to mariannehickman.com/database. Once you put in your information there, I'm going to send this to you totally for free. Open up this database. You're going to click through it, find the next podcast that's relevant to your topic, hit the application button, show up on their podcast, get in front of their people, and share your content. Remember, mariannehickman.com/database. Let's get you unlocked.
If I can tell you a quick story.
Please.
When I was in graduate school, we had a class from Bonner Ritchie, and it was on ethics. And one week we would take all the pros of a cause. The next week we would take all the antis of the same cause, and we would discuss those, and then we'd go on to another topic. At the end of the class, Bonner had me come in, as he did all the students, and he said, well, what did you think of this class? So I said, Bonner, on one hand, I loved it. I loved the excitement and the learning, and on the other hand, I kind of hated it. And he said, why? I said, because I love being devoted to a cause. And when I understand both sides, it's hard to be as devoted. And he kind of looked at me and he smiled and he said, Steve, that's the purpose of the educated man, to keep both sides from killing each other while we learn to talk and solve problems. And that has stuck with me for all my life. And I think it's just a critical skill that we need to reinvent, redevelop, reacquire. We've got to start talking. I'm in this little empty nesters group down here in St. George, and it's all people in their 70s, 80s, accomplished people, nuclear physicists, microbiologists. They've lived all over the world, started companies. And we get together on Mondays and just kind of have somebody come talk to us, or we do something musical. And during the elections last year, I said, why don't we take this opportunity to discuss some of the candidates? Because you're the people I would like to learn from with all your knowledge. Absolutely not. We might offend somebody. Can't do that. We've got to keep this light. And I thought, what a tragedy that here are all these people I would really love to learn from, and I haven't found a way to do it. But I think it's that way all over the country. Families don't get together because Uncle George might be there. And we just don't talk about things. and we critically need to. In fact, and there's a bonus chapter in the book that you have to download. In fact, you don't even need to buy the book, you can download it. And it's talking with family and friends about controversial issues.
Mm.
And I wrote that bonus chapter because I just think it's so critical. And it's just simple things, let's talk to somebody. I'm going to do this with my empty nesters group. Just going to say, look, let's just try this. But let's set some ground rules first. First ground rule is we're not trying to convert anybody. We're just trying to understand. And if we enter a discussion with that as a building premise, we can talk and we can learn. Later on, we can turn to converting if that's what we want to do, but most likely, we just want to learn. The second thing I say is let's not beat each other up with data because you can't trust it for one thing. And we use it not to explain things, we use it to beat up on each other. And that doesn't lead to learning. But somehow we've got to take some ideas like that as families, as friends, as states, as political parties, and learn to talk.
I'm writing down a couple of things that you said because I want to make sure we touch on them. I like you and like the people listening. If you're listening to this, I'm talking to you too. I spent a lot of time on social media over the last 48 hours plus. I wanted to keep up on the stories. I wanted to keep up on the news. I wanted to understand what was going on because there's some part of me that thinks understanding will maybe educate me and help me become better. Regardless of all of that, there's been a couple of messages that I have heard that have really stuck out to me, like like a splinter, but in a good way. And one of those was Simon Sinek, who is someone that I don't always agree with, but someone that I respect immensely. And this is what he said that you touched on, and I want to get your opinion on this. He mentions a lot the word curiosity. And the
Yeah,
more he uses that word and the more I think about that word, the more I believe that curiosity in and of itself can lead to so much peace and to so much of the end of conflict. And it's the antithesis in this example to conversion. I am not out to convert because I don't know what's best for you. I never will.
yeah,
But I am curious about you and I want to understand you, not so any change can happen necessarily. You don't have to change. I don't have to change. But I want to understand you. And this word, this feeling of understanding, I have struggled with this so much because I have a trigger inside of me that I know I'm working on of being misunderstood. Because the fear is, and maybe it comes from my pilot background. My dad was a pilot, his dad was a pilot, all my brothers are pilots. Malcolm Gladwell talked about what happens when pilots misunderstand each other. Ultimately, it can lead to the accidental loss of life if a plane crashes. And if people misunderstand me, it frightens me to the point of this animaliac threat of death, because if I'm misunderstood, then improper action may take place, and it's not usually a life-threatening scenario, but it feels that way at the time. So this combination of curiosity plus understanding, first of all, what do you feel about this? Is it important to be understood as much as it is important to understand? And where does curiosity, what are your thoughts on all of that?
I think he's exactly right. Curiosity opens up everything. I've grew up on a little farm in Idaho and have had the opportunity to be in some 60 countries, live 6 years in Africa, 7 years in Africa, done business all over the world. And in the process, you meet all kinds of people, you see all kinds of things, you talk about things, you see people of different color and religions, and you realize that they're 99% the same if you'll give yourself a chance to talk to them. Uh, a long time ago, I had taken some missionaries after a hike in the Drakensberg Mountains down to a little town called Ladysmith, where there's immaculate, just beautiful little Muslim mosque. I wanted to show it to them. And we're there, we're kind of, all dirty, and I get a knock on the window because we're looking across the stream at this mosque. I wind the window down, the guy says, "Would you like to come in?" I said, "Wow." I said, "We're kind of all messy and sweaty because we've been on this hike, but we would love to." He says, "Well, no, I'll have to ask you when we get in there, take off your shoes and wash your hands." It's no problem. So we go in, there's about 7 of us, and we sit in back, we stand in back and wait till they're finished with their prayers. Not really knowing what was going to happen. The prayers end, they all come back, grab us in hugs, thank us for being there, and saying, "You are our brothers. We are all part of the same Abrahamic religions.
Mm.
We look at Christ as one of our great prophets. We welcome you. You're welcome to our mosque anytime." And I sat there thinking, I wonder if we would be as accepting. I wonder if we would be as open. They didn't start with, "You're wrong about Jesus." They started with the commonality. Look what we share. We share the same 99% of our religion. And that just changed the whole way. Well, I kind of felt that way anyway, but a lot of my missionaries didn't feel that way about Muslims. And all of a sudden, they saw whole different things because we were curious enough to go look at the mosque and curious enough to say we'd love to come in. And they were curious enough to want to learn from us. Changes everything.
That the world needs more stories like this. We do. We need more stories of cross-pollination of ideas across religious borders, across political borders. The whole idea that you mentioned before of we can't talk about that because someone might get offended. It has caused us to live in silos. It has caused us to
Exactly.
we don't go to family dinners, or some people aren't invited to family dinners. We don't go to weddings. We don't go to celebratory events. We avoid each other on the internet. We don't talk about things that are important to talk about because of this fear of offending somebody. And sometimes it's if you offend the wrong person, catastrophe can take place, and then that begets more fear of offending the wrong person. I have to ask this, and I want your opinion on this because I teach public speaking, and with the events that happened this week, and I watched as the microphone fell from Charlie's hands this week, and I
Yeah.
looked at that, and I said, I'm in that profession. That could have been any one of me or my friends. I share many beliefs. I probably would offend some of the same people. And I was talking to my daughter this morning. I was dropping her off at Color Guard, and I was briefly iterating to her. I'm like, "Do you know how important your job is as Color Guard in hand-to-hand combat, in battles?" The Color Guard was the one job that stood until the end, until the last man standing, the man or woman that held up the flag, that held up the colors. And I thought about Charlie's microphone the same way, and I thought about, am I going to pick it up? Am I going to pick up that microphone when he dropped it? Am I the next? I hope I don't get martyred for the cause, but what cause would I be willing to be martyred for? What cause would I be willing to leave my children motherless for? And my list plummeted. There are many things that I once spoke on that I won't speak about anymore because they're not worth my life.
Yeah.
And the thought that I keep having is this: the reason that it's so important for the conversations that you are talking about, for the conversations to take place, these rough topics to not be avoided, is so that people stop getting to that level of angry. And here's the question I'm boiling down to. And this is what I wrote down. Is there in your mind a point of no return? The men that took the lives of the men that you listed before, the John Wilkes Booths of the world, the how do we find these people before they become that angry? How do we find this? This is what prevents mass shootings. This is what prevents assassinations. Is it possible? I know that there's no way of completely eliminating hatred and evil from the world, but are there, I'm just going to say, are there Unabombers that can be healed before they become the people that are willing to cause mass destruction in this world? How do we find them, and how do we have these conversations before that shift happens? And maybe you don't have the answer, but I think it's worth talking about.
Well, I don't think anybody has the answer because it's a lot of things. I do think, though, we have become so dependent on bits and bytes from the internet and social media that to some extent that leads us, well, the algorithms take us to the far right or the far left. They push us apart. We don't even know what's happening. But they're also just numbers and images. And to some degree, we lose the humanity out of that. You know, and we like to think it can't happen to us. Many years ago in Zimbabwe, I was in the office of Dr. Samba. Dr. Samba was the head of World Health for Southern Africa then. And while I was waiting, I started talking to his secretary. And I said something like, you know, I don't think the violence going on over in the Congo right now could happen here. And she says, Steve, come here. And she grabs my hand and puts it on her head and pulls it back. And I feel this gigantic scar. And she says, that's a bullet. I didn't think anything like this could ever happen in my country. But the rebels shot me here. I watched my husband be chopped to pieces with a machete and my youngest daughter die of starvation. Don't ever think it can't happen to you. And that's pretty sobering.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, well, things will get better. I don't think things get better on their own. I think things get better when people take action, when we do something about it, even if it's just a little step. Again, a long time ago, I was on a march for freedom from the train station in Boise, Idaho, to the Capitol building. My youngest two sons, who are black, were about, I don't know, 3 or 4 of them. And we get down there and somebody had asked me to give a talk. Well, you know, I wasn't sure what to talk about because it was a rainy, cold evening. And so I remember part of what I said in the talk was, look, I'm not going to ask you to demonstrate all the time or to write your congressman or to start a new foundation. What I would like everybody to do, and this is something you can all do, is next time you see a person of color or a different religion or a different ethnicity or a different social economic status, instead of turning around like we usually do, just go over and say, hi, this is who I am. Tell me about yourself. Because I really think if we could all do that, that would make a far bigger difference than any law that can be passed in Washington. And we can all do that. It's just take that little tiny bit of effort, curiosity, to learn something about somebody else.
Why don't we do that instinctively? Why is that not the first compulsion?
I think it's, in part, is fear. It's part of what we're bombarded with. These people are dangerous. Anybody different than you is dangerous. It's part, I think, kind of human nature. We tend to stay with people who think like we do, who look like we do, who live like we do. And we don't realize that everything else out there is okay too. One of the great things in living overseas and in different cultures is you learn that you really love America, but you also learn that America is not always right. And there are different ways to do things. And we ought to listen to each other. We can learn from each other if we weren't so arrogant. And that's true as individuals as well as it is for countries. But I think we like to be comfortable, and we're comfortable with everything the same. But everything the same leads to great errors in judgment because we don't understand things that are different.
I once watched I'm a huge nerd at heart. I love science. I love physics. I want to come to this group that you have of physicists and mathematicians that get together every Monday night. But I once saw this. It was a demonstration, an illustration, ironically enough, of why Godzilla could never exist. And I'll get to the relevance of that in just a second. But the theory was that the bone structure within Godzilla could never exist because the bone structure is an interior skeleton, not an exoskeleton, and what sustains you and me as 5 to 6 foot to maybe 7 foot tall beings would break down when you get to the 50, 60 stories tall. And they illustrated it with like a Rubik's Cube sort of idea to where if you multiply a single cube, let's just say you have a single cube with a centimeter long side, it means a centimeter long on every side. If you double a three-dimensional object, you don't have 2 cubes. You have 8 cubes because you double in all dimensions. And if you triple that, now you have 3 times 9, 27 cubes. Because it's triple in every direction. And the demonstration was 1 cube doubled is more than the double because we're dimensionally. And the whole point of saying that was that what worked for a single dimension will not work when it grows. And that reminds me of what you said. What worked for the United States as, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but we are a nation in our infancy. We are babies. There are buildings in Europe older than our country. We are juvenile as a nation as far as age goes. And what worked 100 years ago will not sustain us now. And it won't sustain where we want to go. We have to reorganize the system. The interior skeleton that we built our nation on needs to evolve as our country ages and as more people come in and as we evolve as human beings. And I don't know what that means fully. Maybe and I look at the law of entropy. The law of entropy in physics and mathematics says without work, things fall apart, essentially.
Yeah.
So
You know,
what
even Jefferson said, each new generation needs to reinvent itself. They need to look at their own, constitution. Another story.
I love your stories. Please tell more.
I was in Malaysia a long time ago, trying to recruit somebody, and go over to dinner, and I see him. He's got New York Times, and I sit down, and he pulls down the Times. He's got tears in his eyes. I said, "What's wrong?" And he says, turns the Times around. The her headlines all, riots and come protests against this and this problem. And he says, "What are you doing?" I says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Don't you realize that you are our best hope for freedom and democracy? And look at what you're doing to yourself." And I remember saying to him, America is a democracy. We're also a democracy in a time of change like the world has never seen. And we embrace every new thing that comes along, whether it's the internet or it's a sexual revolution or whatever it is. We jump right in. And when we do that, we make all kinds of mistakes. And we pay the price for that. But eventually, we learn how to overcome it. We learn how to manage it. We learn how to move forward. And I said, all that stuff you're reading in the front page of the Time now is true. But I believe that we'll find a way through it and be better for it. Well, we did get better for it at that point. And I hope that we will do the same thing like this. We're now faced with things we don't understand. We don't understand what AI is going to do to us. We don't understand what this focus on violence is going to do to us. We don't understand the things that are going on in the world today and what it's going to do to us. But I have hope. I have the belief that we will figure it out. And I think a lot of that is going to come from the younger generation. You know, my parents, they grew up in the depression of World War II. Those are pretty big issues.
Mm-hmm.
And my own generation grew up when the sky was the limit after World War II. The generation now is facing a whole different set of issues. And those issues change faster and faster and faster, maybe faster than humans are able to adapt. But I fully believe that we will, and the younger generation will be the leaders in making that happen.
It's crazy to watch. I watched another Instagram reel of a bus driver today who said that her bus full of kids, as she drove them to school, arguably one of the scariest places for kids to be right now, given Evergreen, Colorado this week, given Columbine 20 years ago, both were in the same county where I went to school. I grew up in Denver. Columbine was a couple schools over. Evergreen was within our district. And nationwide, we feel it. But at the same time, she heard these kids speaking positively, that they're speaking life. And it is one of the great tragedies of social media that anger sells.
Anger
That
sells. You're right.
sells.
I think anger and depression, another story. There was a period in my life when I was spending 6 weeks in Meridian, Idaho, just outside of Boise, and then I'd be 6 weeks in Zimbabwe working on AIDS prevention. And in Zimbabwe at the time, 38% of all adults were HIV positive. That meant they were dead
Well,
in 5 years. There were no antiretrovirals, there were no cures, there were no treatments. They didn't even want to talk about it. They also were running 1,000% a month inflation. The farms were being shut down. And yet, when I was in Zimbabwe, I would go out on the streets and walk with people, and they were excited about life. They were looking forward to what comes next. They had joy in their hearts. And then I would go back to Meridian, big house, big manicured community, and everybody was complaining and going to see the psychiatrist and how awful their life was. I think, what is wrong with this? And I don't know the answers to that. I think maybe when people don't have life-threatening problems, they invent their own, because somehow as humans, we need to have those problems. But it was much more fun to be in Zimbabwe with that joy, in spite of all the disasters, and that forward-lookingness. And to some extent, maybe part of it's the media, maybe part of it is AI, but we seem to have lost track of all we have and are only focusing on what we don't have. And we get further and further, and it drives us down. And we need to look at the positive. I try to every morning sit down and go through what are all the things I'm grateful for. And like you, I go through. When I was a kid, we only knew there was one galaxy. That was it. And now they're looking at what, 3 trillion galaxies?
every
And
star is a galaxy.
yeah, and I am so excited to know all about that, or all that we're learning about that. I'm so excited for this body. This old 76-year-old body has a pacemaker right here. Somebody had to invent that. Somebody had to have a dream. Somebody had to create that. And those dreams keep me alive. And I think we need more people to dream their dreams and follow their dreams and push forward and make things happen. Now, my book is on stories. And the reason I wrote that is because I think stories can play an important role in transferring humanity. And we've done that forever. The pictures of the caves in France with the hunts going on. People were trying to tell their stories because their survival depended on that.
Mm-hmm.
And now we don't do that anymore. And I think we get lots of information from the media and from online, but often that does not come with context. It doesn't come with perspective. It doesn't come with humanness. But if a grandfather is telling a story to a grandchild, it changes everything. Now that's something they can relate to. I was telling a story to my 7-year-old then grandson about his two uncles who are black, and about when they were young, they used to be periodically followed home by the police because of their skin color. And Benjamin looked at me and he said, "Grandpa, that's dumb. Why would they do that?" Well, how do you explain prejudice and discrimination to a 7-year-old?
Oh,
But he didn't want to let it go. And we had this long conversation. He brought it up again the next morning. And I thought, look at how that story transferred into a discussion with that grandson. If I had sat down with Benjamin and said, "Okay, I have a lecture here for you on discrimination," that would have been the end.
right over his
But
head.
yeah, but he was curious because he loved those two uncles. He cared for them. He wanted to know about it. And so he was asking the questions. And that added humanity to what could have been a sterile discussion. And I think to some degree we have lost that. All we have is the data. And we aren't able to put that together with human beings. And when we do that, so what if I shoot one? It's just, doesn't matter. It's just a number out there. And it's not just a number. But we have not done a good job, I think, of society as transferring the humanity.
So if someone's listening to this and they're feeling this, and I hope that you are, because I'm feeling this to the nth degree, that this stats and data versus this cold hard stats, sanitized data, which, by the way, if you're ever leaning on data, I want you to ask yourself who paid for the research, because data can be skewed. If you ever take a stats class in college, you know that data
Yeah.
can be true and skewed simultaneously. So please, please, please don't take that. This is what keeps human beings different from AI, is because we don't function on data. We function on exactly what Steve is talking about. We function on the stories. We function on humanity. We function on our emotions and our feelings. I think we as human beings, and don't even want to say I think, I have plenty of real-time stories and firsthand accounts of what I believe has become, or maybe always has been, the number one fear of human beings. And we act on this fear and we behave on this fear, and is the fear of being wrong. It is what causes fights in marriages. It is what causes fights between parents and children. We have this innate fear that if we are not right, if we are not correct, if we are not true, then something is threatening to us. And Simon Sinek also said earlier, he said, he was interviewing an actor, and the question was, how did you portray this character that you were playing, this evil character that you were playing? How did you portray them as so evil when you're a good person? And the actor said back, the character didn't think they were evil. Most of the time in conflict, like you said, we're 99% similar. We don't think of ourselves as evil. We think of the other person as evil, and we're labeling them, we're dehumanizing them, we're satisfying through stats and data the other person, because most of the time we don't want to look at ourselves because it's scary. There's a threat there, and we've placed that threat as the other person.
That's right. It may be a corollary of what you're saying, but I think another kind of attribute that we have as humans is we want to blame somebody for our troubles. So we find somebody, whether it's color or religion or economics or whatever, we find somebody to blame instead of seeing that somebody as a part of us. I saw a headline just the other day, a politician saying, well, if you walk into a crowd of black people, you got a 30 times higher chance of getting hurt, getting a crime committed. I'm thinking, what? one, where did you come up with this? And, being a mixed race family, if I see a crowd of Black people, particularly in Utah, that's where I go.
Yeah.
That's who I want to find out about them. I don't want to walk away. I want to learn. It's interesting when we adopted our little boys. They were just like 3, 4 weeks old when we get them. My wife had gone to Washington and picked one up. The very next week, I went to Atlanta and picked up the other one.
Oh my gosh,
And
back to
so,
back.
and we were older. So here I am, a mid 40-year-old white guy with a Black infant, and it was interesting. Um, Black people would come up and talk to me. Oh, what a cute baby! Tell me about it. What happened? Not a single white person would talk to me. I don't think they were trying to be discriminator. I think they were trying to look and say, oh, maybe his daughter got in trouble.
Oh my gosh.
So they didn't know how to deal with it. So they imagined the worst and wouldn't talk to me. And I find that true in a lot of cases. We are so afraid of offending somebody that we don't talk to anybody. We lose that curiosity, or we don't act on the curiosity. I think we're still curious, but we don't act on it out of fear.
I think we're assumptive too.
Yeah.
Absolutely assumptive. I've got and I don't know if they'll hear this episode or not, but I've got nieces and nephews who were adopted. Who I mean, if you look at me on this video, I'm obviously not Black. I'm very Caucasian. Someday hope to visit the motherland of Caucasia. I don't know where it is, but I'm a white chick, right? And I have several nieces and nephews who are not, and they are Black. And I went to a in our church there's a infant blessing ceremony. It's not a baptism where you do the sprinkling and all that, but there's just a blessing that we give to the infant. I'm sure you're familiar with this, Steve. um, and in the foyer, we were sitting in the church lobby, if you're not familiar with the term foyer, uh, because one of the siblings of the baby who was being blessed was having a fit. They're 2-year old. We take them out just so we can have a little more quiet in the space. And across the way, a lady that didn't know our family turned to the lady sitting next to her and literally said, "Isn't it a shame that she got involved with that Black man?"
Ugh,
My jaw
yeah.
hit the floor. My jaw hit
Yeah.
the floor. No, there's no shame at all. Why this and maybe, just maybe, this woman was trying in a weird way to be compassionate. I don't know. And I wish that I had gotten up and talked to her. I didn't hear this comment happen. I was told about it afterward, but if I had been next to her, I wish in that moment, with the curiosity that I had now, I wish I would have asked her, "What makes you
Yeah.
say that?"
Yeah. And it's a learned behavior. When our youngest boys were little, my wife used to, before Christmas, kind of probably like you did, your family would get together, and there were all these little cousins. And my boys were the only Black ones. And so all these little white cousins running around. And one of them comes up and she says, Jenny over there said that Hunter, one of these boys, was adopted. Is that true?
I love that they're surprised by it.
Yeah. And I said, well, you notice that they're a different color? Well, so what? You know, to them, they didn't even see that. Made no difference at all. We learn that kind of behavior. We learn to not like this person. I grew up in a small town in Idaho, and this is almost embarrassing. There were a lot of Japanese in my class, and they were the people I wanted to be like. They were beautiful girls. They were smart, and I was in college before I figured out they were there because they were brought in from the internment camps in World War II and stayed and became some of the best farmers in the area.
Wow.
Later on, I was taking I was getting ready to teach a course in discrimination for the military, and they were giving me all these tests and try to see where my biases and things were. And so I'm sitting down with the counselor, and he says, "Well, where did you grow up?" I said, "In Idaho." He says, "Well, how did you get, or he says, you don't have the opinions or ideas or biases about Japanese that I would expect you to have. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know what they are. What do you mean? He goes through some things, lists some things. I go, not where I grew up. That's who I wanted to be like. And it's what we learn. It's what we learn from others. It's if we let our curiosity go, and if we don't, if we wall ourselves out, and I think to some degree, social media and the internet let us do that.
It
They
does.
let us wall ourselves out, and the more we do that, the less we are understanding, the less we care and are concerned about others, the less we view them. Another story. I was a young missionary in Germany, 19, not long after World War II. And so we're knocking on these doors, and America was involved in Vietnam and a lot of civil rights movement going on. And this young man starts into me, like often happened at the doors back then, and he's going through, what are you doing here? Look what you're doing in Vietnam. Look at how you treat your black people. Well, I didn't want to bring up 6 million Jews.
Oh,
But what I did bring up is I said, and this is a young guy. I said, yeah, but you're right. We don't do that well, but we're learning. We're working at it. And how do you deal with Turkish guest workers here in Germany? He says, that's different. I said, why? He says, because they're just animals. And I
oh,
thought,
no.
so I just turned around and walked away. But how do we think that way? How do we point at somebody and say, well, how did this young man point at Charlie and say, I'm going to kill him? I don't even know why yet, but it doesn't matter. Killing people doesn't solve problems. It exacerbates them, whether that's in a school or whether that's Charlie or whatever it is. I'm getting kind of on my soapbox here, aren't I?
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. You know what? I had a friend of mine come over Wednesday night. I do trainings every Wednesday, but I canceled them all because I was I hadn't pulled myself together yet. And I said, I can't train tonight. Please be with your families. And I had a friend of mine come over, and I really respect people that can just pop over to my house unexpected because that's just so kind. Um, and it just, I replayed it over and over again in my mind. I was in disbelief. And as he was leaving, I said, today, hatred beget hatred.
Yeah,
But also, today, angels were born. You can't stretch half of a rubber band. You can only stretch it in two directions. And it's the laws of physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Some people will take that and spew their hatred, and some people will take that and say, I have something to stand for when I was lukewarm before.
yeah,
I resolve to be kinder than necessary. I resolve to find the people that look different and give them a hug if they want it and offer it even if they don't. I resolve to smile at the person walking down the street because I don't know if that smile might just be what my friend Kevin Hines talked about, the one thing he needed before he decided to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. If someone had just smiled, that's all he would have needed. And God saved him. And now he delivers that message to people. It's a remarkable story. But if Steve, if you can leave the person listening to this with everything that's has gone on and will go on and in this crazy world of ours, if you can leave it, and then not gonna knock on wood, nothing ever happens that cuts our life short. But if no one ever hears from you again, if they don't follow you on social media, if they never buy your book, if this is the last they hear from you, what is the message that you want them to walk home with?
that's a big task. Um, I think in my 76 years of experiencing all kinds of things, I think I have looked and said, what would I want to pass on to my great great grandchildren who I will never know? And I think the thing that I would like to pass on is to be in awe of life, all life, to dream dreams and to take action on those dreams, do something, because we all can make a difference if we'll just take that first step.
Well, you heard it here, my friends. I hope that you are curious. I hope that the gift of the time that we've been able to spend with Steve today leaves you better than when you hit play on this podcast. I hope that you travel more. I hope that you expose yourself to other cultures and to other peoples. And more than anything, I hope that you listen to that little shoulder angel that's sitting there tapping you and saying, go shake that person's hand. Go ask them how they're doing and listen for the answer. And when you feel helpless, get helpful. Stephen, where can people
Beautiful.
find you? Where can people find your book? Where can people listen to you more?
We have a website. It's just steve-mann.com. And they can find the book on Amazon. And on the website, they can find links to podcasts like this one, and a little more information about me and why I wrote the book, things like that.
Okay, we're going to make sure we put all of that in the notes. I'll make sure I put a link to the book in the podcast notes as well. That will be there for you. Steve, I apologize if I use the word Stephen. That's Steve is short for Stephen when I'm referring to my brother, so I use it for emphasis. I'm not even sure if your full name is Stephen. I sure appreciate you being here, and I appreciate all of the miracles that had to take place in your life experience and my life experience that brought us together today. And listen, if you're listening to this and this has left you off better, we don't always get to, like Steve said, we don't always get to know what the fruits of our labors produce or who they feed. But I would like for Steve to know if this nurtured you, if this fed you at all, if there's one gold nugget, if there's one thing that you know you need to do before you go to bed tonight, based on what you heard today, just leave it in the comments for us, because that fuels us and that keeps us going. Friends, thank you for being here for this episode of the Marianne Hickman Show. I'll be looking for you in the next video.
Hey, what's up? Marianne Hickman here. Hey, listen, I hope you enjoyed that episode. We have some pretty amazing speakers on my podcast and, of course, more to come. If this is something that you enjoyed, guys, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. You guys know what to do. I love your comments, and I respond to every single one of them personally, not a bot or an agency. So if this is something you're enjoying, tell me about it. Tell me your gold nuggets. I want to hear from you. But here's the most important thing I want you to laser in on. I told you about the podcast database. You've probably seen me post about it all over social media. I want to make sure that you get it. So here's what I want you to do. Go to mariannehickman.com/database. Once you put all of your information in there, I'm going to send you the document. You request access to it. Boom, it's unlocked. Once you're in there, my rule of thumb is to apply to 10 podcasts a month. It's very digestible. It's very easy to do. And the database gets updated twice a week. So I want you constantly checking back in there for the next podcast that fits your audience. Thank you for being here. Much love to you, and we'll see you in the next episode.